Hello again, and welcome to the Invisible College. My name's Adrian Gilbert, and today we're going to discuss a subject which I think is probably the most problematic area of life in the world for most people, and that's the question of sex. Now, you might be thinking, well, what's this old man? What's he on about, Well, I wasn't always old, of course, and I have been around a long time and learnt a few things. And I'm doing this lecture really because there's so much nonsense in the modern world talked about what ought to be a very simple subject. So, the truth about sex. Now, I want to approach this, first of all, from the point of view of electricity. And I think you'll understand pretty easily what I'm on about here. As you probably know, for an electric circuit to work, there has to be a positive charge and a negative charge. The object we call positive is called the anode, and the object that is negative we call the cathode. And if you have an anode and a cathode, and you hold them together, close together, not touching, but in proximity, it will form an electric field in between them. There is a gradient of charge in between these two objects, the anode and the cathode. And that's sort of an analogy for what happens with us as humans. Now, when you connect these two things together, the anode and the cathode, with some kind of wiring, you get a flow through a circuit. And what happens is that the cathode discharges negative charge towards the anode, and the anode discharges positive flow towards the cathode. Actually, it doesn't quite work that way. What happens is that in an ordinary electric circuit, the cathode sends electrons, which are negative charged particles, to the anode, decreases the positive charge on the anode, and because the cathode is losing negative, it increases its positive charge. In an ordinary electric circuit, with wires such as, I've got loads of them around here, you don't get movement of actual atoms. The atoms in the wire are staying in place, and the atoms that make up the anode and the cathode stay in place. It's only the electrons which are flowing. But it has the same equivalent effect of decreasing the positive charge on the anode and increasing the positive charge on the cathode, and meanwhile decreasing the negative charge on the cathode and increasing on the anode. So it's kind of bringing them into equilibrium. So if you think about human sexual attraction, it's the same thing. You have a male and you have a female, masculine charge and feminine charge. In China, they call this yin and yang, don't they? The feminine is yin and the masculine is yang. And if the two are carrying their respective charges, there will be a field of attraction. And of course, there's also other factors to take into account. We each have an ideal in our mind of the kind of person that we're attracted to. And if someone doesn't fit, and it's just at a subconscious level, it's not something we can manipulate and determine and force. You either find someone attractive or you don't. But the degree of attraction in terms of energy will depend on the amount of charge, sexual charge, which is like electricity, that you're carrying yourself and that the other person is carrying. And when a couple gets together, they complete a circuit. And we all know this. I mean, if you've ever had any kind of sexual contact, you know what I'm talking about. Energy flows actually in both directions. and they reach more of an equilibrium. Consequently, the field of attraction diminishes until such time as they've recharged. Now, so if you are living in isolation, say, and you have no contact with the opposite sex, and then you meet people of the opposite sex, you'll feel an attraction, assuming that you're heterosexual, I should say. If you've been sex-starved, we call it, you've been in isolation, you've not been anywhere near members of the opposite sex for a period of time, you'll feel tremendous attraction. And it happens with women as well as men. I went to boarding school and I know exactly what this is all about. The sense that when you live in an isolated community of a single sex, your sex, you are denied something. It's a kind of food that you're denied and you have a hunger for it. Now, normally speaking, if men and women are around each other, there's a sort of discharge going on all the time, even when you're not actually having sex. Just being in proximity with the other sex, there is an exchange of magnetism or whatever it is going on. And so that the sexual charge on both diminishes. But it can be heightened up in other ways as well. But after people have made love, they will find that their sexuality has decreased, and they won't want, they won't want more. I mean, when they're young, they might want more in the immediate time, but there comes a point. So that happens, and we know this. This is common, knowledge within life. But there is more to it than just charge and discharge, charge and discharge. If that was all there was to it, there wouldn't be much to say. But there is more. This whole question depends upon charge. We carry, each of us, we actually run. We are electrical batteries ourselves. We actually run on electricity. We have internal currents, and we also have these external attractions. And that is nature. That is the way life works, and it's true throughout nature. I mean, sex is not something that's confined to human beings. It's right through nature. There's very few organisms, and only the sort of most primitive ones that don't really need sex, that can just split themselves and form, a new nuclei, new bacteria, or whatever it is. But for any kind of higher life that's multi-celled, sex becomes an issue, and it becomes something that's to do with polarity and to do with the electric charge potential. Now, before we go, I just want to make a little mention of this, that it's also possible to sublimate sexual energy inside the body. Now, you've probably heard of that, monks and nuns who go into a convent or a monastery and they have no sex. At least we're told they don't. And the idea of that celibacy, is to raise sexual fire and to drive it upwards inside the body to produce a kind of sexual union inside. And I will discuss that in the college, but I'm not going to talk about it here. But a symbol for that is the so-called phoenix. And this is the root of the imagery of the phoenix, who dies on one level and resurrects on another. And doing this needs instruction, as it can be quite frightening if the person's unprepared for it. And I should tell you that if you sort of did this to yourself quietly in your own bedroom, you'll find it quite terrifying. You need to be instructed on what to expect and what to do, how you should behave. Because this is actually the innermost mystery of, I would say, most, if not all, real religions. And, there are lots of bogus religions which are really just cults. That's a different thing altogether. But real religions like Christianity and Buddhism This is the ultimate goal that they're working towards. It usually requires a period of celibacy for it to happen, but this is not a permanent requirement, and this too will be discussed later in private Invisible College lectures. So you may, if you want to do this, and not everyone's going to do it, but if you want to do this, then you will probably need to engage in a period of celibacy. It might only be a month or two, but there will probably be that need, because otherwise you haven't got enough charge, and it takes charge to do this. But this is the inner teachings, and I told you I'm going to teach you a lot of inner stuff in the Invisible College, of Christianity particularly, is to do with the phoenix. And you can see that that is also a symbol of Jesus himself. So I hope this hasn't shocked you too much. And I wish you all happiness in your life. If you haven't already found your perfect partner, then I wish you success in that endeavor, because I do believe that human beings are much happier when they are married. Yes, married, not just living together, but married, because that means you've made a commitment. Yeah, it's actually an oath that you've taken. It's not just a piece of paper, as some people like to say. It's actually an oath. And it gives the woman rights that she hasn't got outside of marriage. And that's very important. If you're asking her to take her life out of the workplace and to raise children, then she needs to be protected as well. That is one reason why people should get married. But it also makes your partnership stronger if you have made that commitment publicly. So, I mean, I've been married for 37 years? And we're still very happy. So I wish you well, and I wish you all good luck in this adventure we call life. And I hope you will find love. Thank you very much.